What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Salt and Pauper video. Today we're going to continue our Phyrexia All Will Be One Pauper set review. I have been adding a little rules recap of all of the new rules and token types that are coming with this set. We're going to jump right into that, but if you've already seen it, if you've watched the other videos, or you just don't need a rules recap, you can go ahead and skip ahead to the actual cards. I'll leave timestamps down below in the bottom. Let's jump right in. We are going to begin our full Pauper set review for the Phyrexia All Will Be One set. But before we dive into that, let's make sure you guys understand the keywords and some of the new rules mechanics coming to the game. Okay, first off, we have oil counters. Oil counters are a new type of counter that will be placed on permanents and tracked. Think of it like charge counters or energy, similar to those type of effects. These creatures and or machines or artifacts mostly are going to have abilities that require you to spend oil counters to activate. Next up, we have a returning mechanic, Proliferate. For those of you who don't know how this works, I'll give you the exact text, but it is a keyword. It's an action that states choose any number of permanents and or players that have a counter, then give one additional counter of each kind that permanent or player already has. So for each permanent or player you choose, they get an extra counter of every counter they have. You don't get to pick a specific kind of counter to proliferate. Say that this player has a poison and an experience counter, right? Poison is good for you, experience is good for them. If you want to proliferate them, you have to give them both. So keep that in mind. It's a small interaction, but it might be useful to know about. Next up, we have Corrupted. Corrupted is a new keyword that is going to alter cards based on the amount of poison a player has. Corrupted triggers if a player has 3 or more poison counters, specifically an opponent. So you will see spells that have additional effects or better effects if your opponent has 3 or more poison counters. Speaking of poison counters, what are poison counters? Poison counters are a tracked counter on players that are given through Infect, Toxic, some other effects on cards that will just straight up give poison counters. But if a player ever has 10 or more poison counters, they lose the game. Think of this like an emblem. You just track them outside of life totals, and if they ever have 10, they lose. Speaking of ways to give people poison counters, Toxic. Toxic is a new keyword that is replacing Infect from older Phyrexian type sets. Toxic is a static number of poison counters this creature grants during combat. So a Toxic 2 creature, regardless of its power in combat, will deal its regular damage. In addition, it will also grant 2 poison counters. This effect does stack. So if you have a Toxic 2 creature and you give it Toxic 1, it will give 3 poison counters if it hits a player. Keep in mind, this effect does not use the stack. It resolves with damage, similar to Lifelink. It is not a triggered ability. How is this different from Poisonous? If you're familiar with that keyword, I mean, the long and short of it is it's not. Yes, technically, poison was a triggered ability, so it resolved after damage, but there's not a whole lot of gameplay scenarios in which you're going to need to know that difference. But otherwise, it is the new way to give players poison counters. And lastly, we have a new Rebel ability called For Mirrodin. For Mirrodin is a keyword found on some equipment in the set that creates a 2/2 red Rebel creature token when the equipment enters the battlefield and then attaches the equipment to it. So think of this like the new Living Weapon. Living Weapon was an older version of a Phyrexian ability on equipment that made a 0/0 germ token and attached the equipment as it entered play. This is a 2/2 body at standard. So it is more expensive. You'll see a lot of the equipment in this set cost more mana than you would otherwise think they should, but they do come with a 2/2 creature automatically wearing it, so that is something to keep in mind. All right, there's one last new thing to talk about, which is a new token type called a Phyrexian Might. These are 1/1 artifact creature tokens that have Toxic 1 and cannot block. Lots of cards are creating these. Sometimes they create it on ETB, sometimes they create it on Death, but remember, these cards have Toxic, so they're going to deal combat damage and poison counters, and they can't block. So that's a really important thing to be aware of in this limited. That wraps up all the rules, guys. Let's go ahead and jump right into the color reviews. What's up, buddy? Welcome back, Josh, aka Mayo on the internet. What's up, man? You ready to?
Hey, welcome back to you too.
Ready to take a look at some of the new red cards?
Absolutely ootly.
You think Kuldotha Red needs more stuff?
I think Kuldotha Red needs all of the stuff.
Really? Okay. Well, let's see what it's getting. Maybe it gets a bunch. Maybe it gets nothing. Who knows? The first card up is going to be Axiom Engraver. And it's a 1/3 Phyrexian Wizard for 2, red and colorless. It enters the battlefield with 2 oil counters on it. Remove an oil counter from it, discard a card, then draw a card. Tap, remove an oil counter, discard a card, draw a card. This is a pass from me.
Yeah, this isn't really exciting. The tap kind of ruins it for me.
Yeah, me too. It's already limited to 2. Like, why does it need to tap?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine if it was just 1 oil counter and it was a 2/1. Or, just not a 2/1, I mean. So it's not that goblin.
Yeah.
Just to give you some different
Visual
body
Wizard
for that effect. Yeah. But, I mean, this isn't really an exciting card. I don't know of a non-aggressive red deck that wants this.
Me either. Especially when we literally just got Bitter Reunion, which seems like it does this so much better.
Oh God, does it do it so much better.
So yeah, I can't imagine seeing a reason to play this card. And oil counters are awful, so count me out. Next up, we have Barbed Batterfist, which is a 2-mana artifact equipment for red and a colorless. There we go with the colored mana costs again. It has 4 Mirrodin, so it enters play with a 2/2 red rebel token equipped to it. And it gives equipped creature +1/-1, and it has equipped 1. So a lot of people are calling this like new Skull Clamp. This is not new Skull Clamp, but a 2-mana 3/1 that can re-equip as a toughness buff. I don't hate it.
It's not a toughness buff.
Or sorry, a power buff.
Power buff. Yeah.
I don't hate it. 2-mana 3/1 that like comes with it, just leaves an equipment behind when it dies is not nothing, and it's a 1-mana equip, which is the first like equip cost we've seen that was reasonable.
Yeah. A lot of these equipment like live and die by their equip cost.
Yeah.
Equip 1 is honestly what I want for every artifact equipment ever.
Most of them. Yeah, and this is the first one we've seen from this set, I think, that had a non-color coded equip cost. We've seen color identified mana costs and equip costs on all of these for Mirrodin cards.
Yeah, and as we mentioned before in the other colors, like this just isn't a. It's in the color for the original Mirrodin defense, white and red, and it
the Ashiok
doesn't. Yeah, you'd expect it to have the 1 red equip, but the fact that they made this active choice to not do that is giving this artifact a chance, to say the least.
Yeah. I will also say that because this enters with a 2/2, you can blink the equipment to generate tokens, which is kind of cool.
Yep, I was going to say something along the same lines.
And the tokens just chill. If you just blink the equipment, the token just unequips, and then it re-enters play with a new 2/2. So you just get 2/2s off of blinking this card, which is, not nothing. You could put this next to like a Skyfisher or a Glint Hawk, and then like bounce it and replay it, and just get more 2/2s. And then if you can flicker this card, like, could be like actively good. To just make 2/2s at instant speed with this card.
Yeah, I think the decks that play Skyfisher and the Hawk have better things to bounce. Like I think a card is better than a 2/2, unless you're going to be building a massive army, like you get 3 tokens in a turn. And in those decks, that costs like 10 mana. But yeah, the fact that this has the same kind of a thing that the Fountain does, the Blood Fountain, in the fact that it's 2 mana but it makes 2 things, is beneficial for something along the lines of uh, makeshift munitions.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah,
mhm.
like this has a body and it's part artifact, so I think it's good for a lot. This is at least so far a very early front runner for like a genuinely playable card, and I think the first like real genuinely main boardable card that is possible to see a 4 of out of this set. I think maybe the other one is the 2 mana instant speed draw spell that gives somebody a poison counter.
Mhm.
But I think that like this is the first like real card that I could see a deck wanting several copies of. Frascus Fall is likely to be like a 2 of. Um, same with most of the other type of effects. So interested to see where this card lands. Definitely good.
Yeah,
I don't know if this card's good enough for Kuldotha Red, but it's definitely a card that's like considerable in Boros for sure.
I will say this is a very good card to follow up a Swift Spear with.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Trigger the Swift Spear, make it 3/1.
yeah, the only equipment that I can think of that would be better, and that's only because it works with another 1 mana red creature, is Mask of Immolation. Sadly, it has not been downshifted. It's still uncommon, so.
No, it would have been really interesting if we got a downshift of Mortar Pod in this set.
Oh my goodness. Mortar Pod is actually better than Mask of Immolation.
That would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move right along. Next, we have Bladegraft Aspirant, which is a 2/3 Phyrexian warrior for 3, 2 in a red, and has Menace. Equipment spells you cast cost 1 less, and activated abilities of equipment you control that target this cost 1 less to activate. So that the blade gear, that bladed gauntlet that we just saw is like 1 mana and free to equip if this guy's out, which is pretty good. I mean, you could definitely blink or not blink. You could definitely bounce and replay a 1 mana artifact to make a 2/2 a lot more often than you could play a 2 drop.
That is absolutely correct. And that leads into a mono red version of it, because you do still need to pay the red on it. But I mean, that's not nothing. That is far from nothing.
No, it's very interesting to me personally that they made a Phyrexian warrior that looked like it fit in with the rebel theme of artifacts and trying to defend Mirrodin from Phyrexia. Thematically, this seems like such a miss, but the card itself has so much text it's like actually good.
Yeah. This reminds me a lot of the 3/1 Metalcraft Double Strike.
Metalcraft Double Strike. I don't remember that one.
It was a white creature. Cost 4 mana, I believe.
Oh, right. Yeah, I do remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just every time I look at it. But this is breakable though,
This is a good
which
card.
I like. Yeah.
I looked at all the equipments in Pauper, and I don't think this is breakable, but it is certainly good.
I mean, it's breakable. It's just the other half of the combo hasn't been printed yet.
Right, yeah,
You know?
it needs something else.
Yeah.
But very good card. Interested to see if this card has a home in like red white aggro or like some sort of equipment matters deck, like a Boros equipment deck. I know that like White Weenie used to run a bunch. I know that we recently got Great Sword of Tyr, which is an absolutely gangbusters white card. So there's something here with the equipment that we've gotten over the last couple of sets, and this card there's got to be a way to make this a thing. Maybe it's missing a piece or two. It's missing support or something, but it's getting close. So I'm keeping my
Yeah.
eye on it.
Someone playing Great Sword of Tyr against me made me read that card again. And the fact that it gives 1/1 counters
Yep.
is just insane.
Yep.
Card is so good.
Absolutely good card. All right. What do we got next? Blazing Crescendo. Ooh, this is a good one. 2 mana instant for a red and a colorless. You get target creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn. Then exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card. Wow.
Yeah. So you know how Hot Dogs has been falling off?
Has it?
That's what it feels like.
What was it? Was it Titan Strength that was like +3/+1 scry one?
Yeah, it was the guy pushing the boulder.
Yeah. Was that a 1-drop or a 2-drop?
I want to say it was a 1-drop.
Okay. Then I don't think this is a straight upgrade to this, this is a straight upgrade to that, but it's really close. This card is very good.
I mean, they literally made draw a card cost 1 colorless.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that's an upgrade. Like there's no way you could put this at 1 mana.
No shot. But this card's pretty good. Having an instant speed access to your top deck is pretty strong. It gives you a lot of like really weird and wacky lines you can come up with, especially when you pair it with like, let's see, Swift Spear or what is the 1/3 for 2 that gets +1/+0 and scry 1 whenever you cast a non-creature spell?
Oh yeah. Shoot, I had that in front of me like not 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And of course I put it away to make my desk cleaner.
Yeah, that's a good card. It's Burning Prophet, I think.
It's something
I think it's
like
Burning
that.
Prophet. Yeah. That card with this card, pretty good. There's some gas in this card's tank for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Not a huge fan of this art. It's just not really my style. But it might look incredible in foil. Who knows how those flames are gonna look? Yeah, good card. Excited to see what this does. This is another like genuinely playable red card, which is sad because we've seen like 3 playable red cards, and that's more than all 3 of the other colors we've looked at together. And red does not need help right now.
No. All the colors want it though. I'm excited for it. I want 4 of them.
Yeah, for sure. This card's gonna be good.
But I don't want 8, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's fair too. All right, let's see. Next one up is Chimney Rabble. Absolutely incredible card. 3/3 Phyrexian Goblin Warrior for 4 mana, 3 and a red. With haste. Enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature. These goblins look awesome.
Yeah. I want to see what the goblin tokens look
Me
like
too.
from this set. Granted, they are Phyrexian goblin tokens.
Yes.
So
you can't swap them
use
out.
them as goblins,
I
but
know.
I really want to. Just want to take like a Sharpie and just cross out
Phyrexian. Yeah. I will say I wish this was Beetleback Chief.
Yeah.
Like, I wish this was just a 2/2 with haste that made 2 1/1 goblins instead of a 3/3 with haste that makes 1. I think that would be significantly better. And it would have a much higher chance of seeing play. As it is, I don't think this card will be played at all, but it's so cool, dude. I want to play this card.
Right. I mean, Beetleback is legal, but I would like to see it have haste.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to see Beetleback with haste. Then it might actually see play.
Yeah.
But to be fair, the flavor text makes it sound like they're supposed to
like
be
they're equals almost,
yeah, like it's supposed to be a 2/2 that enters with a 2/2 token, which would make way more sense with this art.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it was designed that way and they just changed it later on.
Yeah, maybe 2/2 token was like too good. Or maybe they just decided that they don't want to print overstated goblins and then printed a 3/3 instead. Who knows?
I mean, that would account for. Man, how great would it be for 2/2s making a 2/2 goblin?
Next up, we have Forgehammer Centurion. Wow, this art is so cool. It's a 3/2 Phyrexian warrior for 3 mana, 2 and a red. It says whenever a creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard, put an oil counter on it. You may remove 2 oil counters. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. This is another one of those cards that looks distinctly and like very intentionally like it is a Phyrexian that's joined in the Ariok resistance. Like it's wielding a weapon. It's not made of weapons. It itself is like, infused with like the fires of the forge. This does not seem like a Phyrexian thing to me. Like I'm struggling to find why this is a Phyrexian warrior.
Yeah, design wise, it's a card. No, based off what we determined with the flames previously, you'd expect it to have haste. And I don't see where they could put oil in that guy. So,
He is very clearly not running on oil.
right? But I do want to comment that he looks a lot like that executioner we saw previously, just with a blunt weapon, which seems
he very
decidedly
specifically
not
has a
Phyrexian.
different body type and a different face. The executioner earlier was like decidedly very Elish Norn-ish. He was like triangular and kind of visceral. This guy's made out of metal. He's infused with the forge fire from Mirrodin. This guy seems distinctly Auriok to me. Like this guy was made in like, to fuel the resistance. This is a clone trooper, But he's a Phyrexian for some reason, and I just don't know why.
And I want to say, unlike stormtroopers, it looks like he can actually hit things.
Right? Maybe this is all like part of the story arc that like there are Phyrexians that were left on New Phyrexia when the other Praetors left that reneged from Elish Norn because they were under a different Phyrexian and like refused to fight for her, so they're fighting against her. They're not
Like
part
a
of the
Phyrexian
resistance, but they're not part of Elish Norn's cult.
Okay. Making like
Um,
a third faction then.
yeah, like the enemy of my enemy kind of situation with like the rebels and these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't know. Thematically, I'm a little confused why this is a Phyrexian. This definitely doesn't seem like a Phyrexian to me. But it doesn't. I mean, this is a limited card. We don't have to dive that deep.
Yeah, that's fair. If it had something that said draw cards, then that'd be something different.
Or if it
Or had the
like got
exile effect.
+1/+0, or
Yeah. Yeah, as it is, he just stands to get 1 oil counter when a creature or artifact is put into the graveyard.
Yeah, this is getting bolted faster than anything.
Yeah, like it's gonna be like, all right, he gets 1 counter and he gets the second and response, kill it.
Yeah.
Like that's how it's gonna go all the time.
All right. Next up is Free from Flesh, which is an absolutely amazing looking card, and I can't wait to see this in foil. It is a 1 red mana instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Put 2 oil counters on it. As awesome as this art is, this card effect is terrible.
Right. And it checks most of the boxes, right?
Right?
It's got a sick name. Art is amazing. Costs 1 red, and it's an instant. And then you read the abilities on it, and it's just not there.
Yeah, and even the art like doesn't really tell a story of like becoming a machine. It's the flavor text make it seems like this guy just got like dunked in the fires of Phyrexia and like became a Phyrexian, and I'm like, bro, that's not how this works.
Right? Yeah, it's like, so based off of what happened with Vraska, Phyresis being how she was completed.
Yeah.
Apparently, this person was supposed to go through Phyresis as well, but it looks like he's just taking a magma shower.
This guy went through Phyresis.
Yeah. and I don't get it.
I don't either. I don't get it. And I don't get why you would ever want to put 2 oil counters on something. Like they're not even a good mechanic. They're super limiting. Like give us a keyword and this pump spell would have been somebody, you know?
Honestly, it doesn't even need. Um, you're right. It doesn't need the oil counters. Just needs to say, do the thing that removing 2 oil counters would do
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, target
Mm,
creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Target creature can't block this turn, or just anything really. And this
hmm
card would have been like marginal, but now it's bad. Card's
Yeah,
bad.
or like shock something and then give the creature that
Oh my
was
god! If it
blocking
was
trample.
+2/+2 to target creature, deal
Oh no
2
no no! This
damage
would
to
be
something.
instead of the
Okay,
+2/+2.
okay. I was like,
Yeah,
holy shit, that's
'cause I mean, like,
incredible.
I'm just saying, like, look at it's being bathed in
Yeah,
fire. You're freeing it from the flesh.
yeah. No, I'm with you. With it,
Good.
this should be dealing damage somehow, but it's not.
hmm
Um,
Somehow it does the opposite.
I know. All right.
Uh,
Next up, we have Furnace Strider,
hmm.
which is a 4/5 Phyrexian beast. For 4 and a red, 5 mana total. It enters with 2 oil counters on it. You remove 1 target creature you control gains haste until end of turn.
So just a 5 mana 4/5 with haste,
So
isn't it?
Bitter Reunion is a really good card. And this card
I
is not Bitter Reunion.
mm-hmm.
Oil
Uh,
counters are just such a pass for me, dude. Nothing that has an oil counter on it thus far has been a card that I'm even remotely interested in playing.
yeah, I
I feel
mean,
like they fumbled this mechanic so hard because this could have been a really cool mechanic in like the Urza Mishra Mechazoid set. And
mm,
instead they just kind of slapped it on Phyrexian cards that are very clearly not running on oil and are running on like this mythical fire forge stuff from Mirrodin. But some of the like the black and blue cards are using oil. The blue cards are using like this chromatic stuff. The red cards are using lava. Like they made this ubiquitous like energy source for Phyrexian machines, and then not all of the Phyrexian cards need them, and the ones that do like sometimes don't even look like machines, and none of them are using the same stuff. And yeah, I just ugh, not a fan. Not a fan.
oh man. Of course, of course they had to ruin my fun with this. I was gonna say it looks like they're running on the flames of the firebrand, but Chandra's one of the ones that isn't completed.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
I will say the flavor
0 out
text
of
is kind
10.
of interesting here. With the Quiet Furnace closed to all other factions, Urabrask smiths were free to build anything their creativity demanded. And since Urabrask is like the renegade praetor, right? He was the defector. Um,
He defected?
yeah, wasn't his like story that he was like the betrayer?
That seems like I don't know enough about it to counter it.
Oh, I don't know details, but it's interesting to me that we've seen several red Phyrexian things that look like they could be fighting with the forces of Mirrodin against Elesh Norn's faction, and that specifically references Urabrask's smiths building whatever they want because nobody else can go in there and stop them. Just throwing it out there. Thematically, it kind of lines up with my theory that not all of the Phyrexian factions are working together anymore, and the kind of division between planes has led to some Phyrexians being left on New Phyrexia but refusing to follow Elesh Norn.
That's fair. I would say just it also could be read as because Urabrask isn't there telling them what to do, that they got to
Absolutely,
do whatever they wanted.
absolutely.
Um,
But the
mhm.
reason I think it's the way that I want it to be is because they specifically reference that the furnace is closed to other factions.
Mhm.
Because they could have just said that last line, right? Urabrask Smiths were free to build anything their creativity demanded, and it would have been like, yeah, he's not there to supervise, Imagineers
Oh,
running wild. But they specifically
uh-huh.
reference that they're only free to do that because it's closed to the other factions.
Yeah, so maybe he just didn't leave Elish Norn in charge of his thing.
Well, none of them are. So the whole thing about the
Exactly.
Praetors
Well,
of
mhm.
Phyrexia is that each Praetor controls their own faction, and no Praetor
Yes.
rules over anyone else's. So when he left, I mean, there may have been like kind of this understanding that the Phyrexians would just hold their home planet together, but I'm getting the strong pull here that like thematically there are Phyrexians that are revolting against Elesh Norn in lieu of their masters.
That's fair. I mean, honestly, if they're all building, as we know Phyrexians are, then there's going to become a scarcity of resources, and that's just going to breed conflict or
Mm,
lead to conflict.
that's true. That's kind of why they're
Mhm.
spreading the phyresis through the plains, right? Is to kind of monopolize so that they continue to grow because they're outgrowing their home planet. Right? They conquered Mirrodin,
And they saw it.
and then they started spreading through the world gate to get to other planes to continue like grabbing resource grabbing and ruling.
Mhm.
Anyway, next up we have Hazardous Blast, which is a 4 mana sorcery, so it's unplayable. Got it. Um, for 3 and a red, you get Hazardous Blast deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Creatures your opponents control can't block this turn. So yeah, it's unplayable. Got it. Um, the Machine Orthodoxy finds strength in its numbers. The Quiet Furnace finds that amusing.
Yep.
Yeah, this is very distinctly an Urbrast Machination fighting other Phyrexians. It's burning mites. I think there's a story here that we're not aware of yet. But anyway, yeah, this card's bad. Thematically, cool stuff. I'm interested in like the story of what's going on between the Phyrexian factions and the Praetors now that they're all on separate planes, and like, is Urbras just gonna run Capenna and Elesh Norn's gonna stick to New Phyrexia, or at some point are they gonna reconverge and try to like spread their influence over each other's planes and kind of split it all up 5 waves again, or is everybody gonna stay separate? What's the story there? But
Mm.
this card's bad.
Yeah, this
No two
card's
ways about it.
pretty bad. I mean, it honestly, mites are the only thing this card can kill, so it makes sense to have it in the art, but
Yeah. Now
I don't really ever
there
see it
is
being
one
played.
thing of note about this card is that
It's
this
all of it.
this is an example of power creep
Yep.
because this exact card used to be
Mhm.
Wrap and Flame,
Yep. Up to 3
which
creatures.
was 3 creatures still get dealt 1 damage and cannot block. This is all creatures get dealt damage and all creatures can't block for the same exact mana cost at the same speed. So they are scaling it up, but 4 mana is just untenable
And
for Pauper.
uh, honestly, I blame End the Festivities for this.
I mean, we've
Uh,
had Electrickery for a lot longer than we've had in the festivities,
yeah, but that cost 2 to do the thing
but
that
it
End the
was an
Festivities was for 1.
instant.
Yeah, you're paying the flash cost on it for
Yeah,
the one
which
color.
is 1 colorless.
Yeah.
So the effect of 1 red to deal 1 damage to all things is the same, right? It's the standard. So you're telling me that this card is a 1 mana sorcery that says deal 1 damage to each opponent or each creature your opponent controls, and then you're paying 3 extra mana to say creatures your opponent control can't block this turn?
I mean, I am not paying any amount of mana to cast this spell.
This could be a 2 mana spell and it'd be reasonable.
Oh
It
yeah,
might it still might not be
that'd be
that
a sick
playable,
kind of
but
pyroclasm.
it'd be
But
like
yeah,
okay. Like I would probably run that over like Smash to Dust if it was a 2 drop.
that's fair. Just being able to swing in as if the creatures weren't there anyways.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like
Yeah,
destroying a defender, right?
it's pretty much.
So
So I know you've been talking a lot about cards that would look really pretty in foil, and this
yeah.
next card that's coming up reminds me a whole lot about like Putrid Imp's
All
foil.
right, well let's
Oh, it
take a
has
look
just a
then.
lot of blank
Oh,
space on
right.
it.
Hexgold Slash. This card is going to be an incredible foil, or it's going to be an awful foil, and there will be no in between. It is an instant for 1 red that says deal 2 damage to target creature. If that creature has toxic, deal 4 damage to that creature. This card is actually quite good, and I think that if there is even remotely a chance that toxic was a playable playable keyword or a playable deck in Pauper, this card ends that notion immediately. This card is very strong and would immediately be sideboarded if toxic starts to take hold in Pauper. This is the very elegant, very efficient answer that like we wanted Brothers War to have for artifacts. This has, but it's for toxic, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this card's really good. I mean, it's not widely playable. It's definitely like Silver Bullet sideboard tech, but if toxic exists, this card will play.
Something that I'm taking a look at right now, I'm trying to see how many toxic creatures have toughness greater than 3.
Not
Because
many.
you and I can agree that Bolt is just better than this card, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. There are 2 creatures with toughness 4 that I can see in white and black that we've looked through.
And are their mana costs above 4?
Their mana costs are at 4.
Yeah, then they're unplayable. So
yeah,
but outside of toxic being a deck that needs to be answered, this card is quite good and quite efficient at what it needs to do. But what it needs to do is probably not going to be in Pauper.
Yeah, I would have liked the wording to be if the creature can give poison counters. It's clunky and it doesn't reference any specific mechanic, but that's only because I want this card to actively interact with infect or with poison after that.
I would have much rather this been corrupted Galv Blast than what we got.
That is a very interesting mechanic there.
I mean, last time we were on Mirrodin, we got Galv Blast, which was Metalcraft Bolt, right? It was better Bolt with Metalcraft, but it was shock, and then it was 4 damage if you did the thing, and it was 3 artifacts. So I would have very much liked this to be negative Bolt and be 2 damage shock, unless you have 3 poison counters, and then it was 4 damage. It would have been a really cool flip on Galv Blast, and it would have been a very interesting way to push that mechanic, because that would have been like worth looking at, right? This card is not, but I wish it would have been corrupted Galv Blast. That would have been a really interesting way to build that card.
That would be intriguing, to say the least. That would be a lot more to talk about.
Exactly.
Because it would be in the corrupted deck, but not in the toxic deck.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very, I don't want to say difficult, but you got to be thinking about that ahead of time.
Well, yeah, it would be very close to kind of like the old version of like Artifact Burn, where you were running an artifact sub-theme in order to make Galv Blast good. Now artifacts are like ubiquitous, and you can just play them in whatever and have Galv Blast be 4 damage, which is why it's too good. But beforehand, you kind of had to build a deck in like a non-intuitive way to make Galv Blast good. And this would have been a really interesting spin on that, where you had to play your deck in a very non-intuitive way of like dealing damage, but sort of chipping in poison counters when you could. Like, that would be a reason to run Toxic over Infect, right? Because you're going for an actual 20 damage kill, but you need to put 3 poison counters on them to open your reach.
Yes.
You know, I would have really liked that style of Corrupted, where it is confused, right? It is trying to do both things, but there is it gives you a reason to run Toxic specifically over Infect.
Yes.
And it gives you an efficient enough reward for jumping through those hoops that it's actually worth trying to do, right? Because none of the corrupted, cards have really been like rewarding enough to go through the hoops.
Yeah,
we've seen like the
Poisonous
counter
also
spell
interact
maybe,
well.
but
Yeah. I haven't taken a look in a very long time to see if there are any good poisonous creatures.
There's literally only two.
Oh, great. Well, in that case, yeah. So it's really only toxic you'd be running,
Yeah.
not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Good talk.
All right. Next up, Kuldotha Cackler. This is a 2/3 Phyrexian hyena. For 2 and a red, it has trample, and whenever it attacks, it gets +X+O, where X is the number of permanents you control with oil counters on them. So this is like the quote unquote oil payoff. This card's bad. This card's real bad. There's no shot this card's good. Yeah, no shot this card is good. I want it to be good. It's probably going to be really good in limited. Like, you could probably get a ton of oil in a limited pool and just, like, go off with this dude. And he's going to be a 3-drop that attacks as, like, a 7/3 with trample, you know? But, yeah, for Pauper, this card's basically unplayable.
Mm-hmm. Oh. You know what we've been overlooking?
What?
So before it was poisonous, it was just poison counters.
Mm-hmm.
They're all still bad, but that is another thing. It's not just poisonous, not and toxic and infect.
There are ways to give poison counters that aren't toxic, poisonous, or infect?
Yeah.
Like what?
And they're so they just say give poison counters, but
okay.
those are not they're not keyworded.
Yeah, that's fine. We can talk about those later. I don't think those are going to be relevant enough in. I mean, I've never even heard of them, which means they're very clearly not very good.
No. I just wanted to, give the complete story.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Molten Rebuke, which is a 5-mana sorcery. Okay, well, it's unplayable. 5-mana sorcery. For 4 and a red, you get choose one or both, deal 5 damage, target creature or player, destroy target equipment. This is limited removal at its absolute worst. This is Lava Axe if Lava Axe was unplayable. It's just, this is not a good card. Moving on.
Well, yeah. I would say it's better than Lava Axe because you get to choose both. But
Lava Axe can go to a player, right?
That's fair. Lava Axe can't target creatures though.
So it's killing the thing you want to kill.
That's
if
fair.
you're spending 5 mana on a red spell, it better hit players.
Yeah, not a good card.
Why doesn't this say any target? Anyway, next up is Sawblade Scamp, which is a 1/1 Phyrexian beast for a single red. It has haste. Interesting. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on it. And then it has tap, remove an oil counter, deal 1 to each. Oh. So this is a pinger. This is a bad pinger. And, yeah, I can't imagine this card being better than, like, any of the existing pingers we already have in Pauper, right? Like, there's like Fire Slinger if you really want something that taps for damage and you're not restricted to oil counters. There's the other one that like sacrifices itself to deal a damage, right? But it has haste if you really need like a haste 1-drop.
Yeah, Goblin.
Yeah, and then if you want something that like works with non-creature spells, just run like Flame Breather or Thermal Alchemist. Like, this card is significantly worse than both of those, even though it's a 1-drop.
Yeah, I will say that Thermal Alchemist is better. But I want to say that this card, this Sawblade Scamp, would have more impact, I think, than the Vulshock Sorceress or Vulshock Sorcerer.
Vulshock
just
Sorcerer.
Because the 3-mana 1/1 haste ping.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I will say Vulshock Sorcerer can target any target, which is significantly better than targeting 1 damage to each opponent.
Yes, I agree. But this card, assuming you get them out on optimal turns, this card would win the race. Or not win the race. It would get 3 damage in.
Yeah, right? It would get 3 damage in, and then Vulshock Sorcerer would just kill this.
Yes. That's... I mean, if you're only targeting players each time, it would win a race, but this card is going to get in some damage beforehand. And if you really need, like, I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, I don't know.
For some reason, a bloodthirst effect. This
Sure.
is fine,
I
but
look
the
at it
clear
in
color
terms
combo's
of
better.
like Pauper mechanics and Pauper metagame, and right now this is going to
Mhm.
get blocked by a lot of Swift Spears if they really are that scared of it. You can't attack with it on turn one if they play a Swift Spear. If they attack you, you can
That's
attack with it, but you're losing that race.
yeah.
And then the fact that this can only put one damage out of turn is a huge no from me. Like
Yeah.
every good one drop in Pauper, except like Voldaire and Epicure, can deal more than one damage a turn.
hmm And
Uh,
Epicure is good for a
and
different
yeah, and
reason than its damage.
Epicure also has haste,
Yes.
and doesn't and can't be blocked the turn it comes out, and then also just leaves an artifact behind, which helps you dig or trigger
Mm.
artifact synergies.
Use
Uh,
haste, unblockable vigilance, draw a card. What
yeah,
doesn't that card say?
yeah, right. It doesn't say death
Mm.
touch. That's about it.
Ah. I know just the card for you. It's black, and we talked about it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I just this card says oil counter, which means I'm out. Like there is yet to be an oil counter card that I want to play, and this is not breaking that rule.
Yeah, I mean,
I know a lot of
this
people
is
that think this card is pushed, and I think those people are very they're like they're overgassed. Like they've got hype syndrome. This card's not good.
uh, yes, it's not good, but it is definitely pushed. It's got a lot of words to let you do a lot of stuff.
Well,
Um,
but it comes with its own downside. Like if this was just haste 1/1 pinger, this card is pushed. But it's not. It's like you gotta play non-creature spells
mhm,
to allow yourself to even do it. It doesn't even enter with an oil counter. Like it doesn't even start
mhm.
able to use its own ability. Like that's
Yeah.
huge no from me.
So you're saying it's just a goblin hasty boy swinging in,
Yeah, this is just a
Mm.
1/1 haste goblin. Like
and then he gets words when you cast a spell.
yeah,
A
and
non-creature rather.
you have to not follow him with a creature for him to gain words.
hmm That's fair. So taking out the two paragraphs at the bottom, yeah, he's a 1 mana 1/1 with haste.
And then even after he's just a pinger. And you could get exactly that on like 5 other cards, and at least 2 of them are better than this, um and the ones that are actually played, like Thermal Alchemist, Firebrand Archer, and Flame Breather, can deal way more than 1 damage a turn. Like if you're gonna try to link pinging damage to non-creature spells, play one of the good ones, and this is not in that list.
Valid point. Um, yeah, I would say you probably, if you're looking for something like Bloodthirst, maybe, and you need to make sure that you get the damage in, you're still probably better off playing Epicure.
Yeah,
This
or
is
just like
mhm.
or just like actual Thermal Alchemist or like Goblin Arsonist or something, because
Well, if
this
you assuming you're playing Bloodthirst and you need it on turn 2,
well that's what I'm
or you
saying.
need to have.
If you're playing
Mhm,
Bloodthirst, like you're playing creatures, which means this can't ping.
mhm.
So you're relying on it just being a 1-drop haste dude that, and if that's the case, then it didn't need haste, right? Because you need to attack on turn 2 to trigger Bloodthirst. And this can't ping before you play your Bloodthirst dude because you haven't played it on creature spell. So you're much better off playing like Goblin Fireslinger or like one of the actual 1-drops that can tap to deal damage.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
what's
know.
the?
This card's a huge no from me.
Yeah, all right. I know there's another one red card from Ikoria. I can't remember if he's uncommon or not, but he has the untap clause when you cast a non-creature and you pay a colorless and tap him to deal 1.
Oh, I don't know, but tapping with a mana cost sounds abysmal.
Well, I was bringing that up because which one do you think would be more playable? Probably the second one because it has the untap clause.
Um, yeah, probably.
Yep.
Because it can just tap to deal damage without having to cast a non-creature spell beforehand, right?
Yeah,
Tapping a non-creature just untaps it.
casting non-creature untaps it.
Then
A
that one's
one
better.
colorless card.
That
Yeah,
one's
it's
definitely better.
Blister Spit Goblin. That's
Yeah,
it.
that one's definitely better because there's no upper cap on how many times you can activate it. Given an infinite
Mhm.
amount of turns, you can use it an infinite number of times. this has like a hard ceiling on how much damage it can put out, and it's directly linked to your cards. And that's because it's not even 1 per turn. It's maximum 1 per turn. Like, there are turns when you're not going to be able to ping with this card.
0 per turn.
Yeah, and that's just really bad for a deck that needs to be very efficient with its 1-drops and get, you know, a meaningful amount of damage instead of just playing a bolt.
Right.
Because this could just be a Rift Bolt, right? So it better put out at least 3 damage to make it better than a Rift Bolt. And I don't think it's going to.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe if you didn't have the tap to remove an oil counter.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. If it just said 1/1 for 1 haste, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on it, and then remove an oil counter, ping an opponent for 1. Not even each opponent, just ping an opponent. Oh my god, it would be so good.
I just thought about Free from Flesh with this card. That would be beautiful. Yeah.
I mean,
what the hell, Watsy? Why can't you give us everything we want?
Sort of. It's still just limited to 1 damage a turn, but yeah.
No, I mean, it would be without the tap there, because he could remove an oil counter and Free from Flesh
in the rework. Yeah, he's better.
Yeah.
All right, Shrapnel Slinger is next up. It's a 2/2 Phyrexian beast for 1 and a red, 2 mana total. It's an artifact creature, and when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, destroy target artifact and opponent controls. So this should have been exploit. That's exactly what exploit is. I don't know why we're not keywording it.
It's because Phyrexians don't exploit things.
They absolutely do. This should have had exploit. I don't care if it's not an evergreen or carnivorous or whatever we're calling them keyword these days. It should have had exploit. Let's be honest here. If we have a repeatable text box effect that has several words in it, just keyword it and standardize it. We don't need thematic keywords. We don't need different keywords for the same effects over different sets just because. Just give us evergreen keywords for the things that happen all the time. We already have one established for this. Use it. Anyway, 2/2 artifact creature for 2 that sacrifices a creature to destroy an artifact. It's in red. I don't hate this. I mean, previously I think the cheapest creature artifact ETB removal thing we had was like the Barbarian, right? The one that gave you like a treasure or destroyed an artifact. It was a 3-drop 2/2 Plundering Barbarian.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is better than Plundering Barbarian, but it's close. And I think in the cube it might be better than Plundering Barbarian because it goes with like the sacrifice sub-theme that several of the red archetypes have.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm not like against that. I think maybe Plundering Barbarian is a little bit more like widely applicable because when you don't need to do it, you can just get a treasure token, which is definitely better than just nothing. But 2/2 for 2 is like genuinely a lot stronger in cube than a 2/2 for 3. So I don't know. Maybe this makes the cut. This is an interesting card. It's on my maybe list. This is one of the few cards for the cube that are on the maybe list. I don't know that this is going to make a huge impact on Constructed, but you might see some pop up now and then. I mean, artifacts are a huge part of Pauper, and anything that says destroy an artifact could be playable if there are enough of them out there.
Yeah. This is never... And so in the decks in Constructed Pauper that you see this card, it is never going to sacrifice itself if its controller has the option. Because otherwise, they're just playing a sorcery speed shatter.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something else they want to sacrifice to get value.
Yes.
And that's where this is going to shine. That's when this is going to be in your
side. I will say I wish this said sacrifice an artifact or creature. It would have made more thematic sense and this card would be more playable. And I don't think it breaks it at all.
Right, because it is not shrapnel that is doing the slinging. It is slinging shrapnel, which comes from metal things, artifact.
So I wish this said sacrifice an artifact or creature to destroy target artifact. It would be much more playable. I think it would be better theme. Yeah, especially because the flavor text like legitimately makes it sound like, you know, artifacts work. I mean, I understand that tokens are creatures too, but they are artifact tokens.
Tokens aren't creatures.
It says they may have unlimited mites, but that just
Silly.
means we have unlimited ammunition. It definitely, you know, seems like this could have very easily said sack a creature artifact and be much better. Our last card of red is Vulshock Splitter, which is a 4 mana equipment that comes with a creature token. It has 4 Mirrodin, which means it enters play with a 2/2 Rebel equipped. This has equipped creature gets +2/+0, and it equips for 3 mana, 2 and a red. Man, it just, God, this card makes Bone Splitter look so good.
Right.
Like,
In what world are you
honestly,
paying 4 for a 4/2? In what world are you doing that?
especially in red, like you don't want to. There are 3 mana cards that have haste that are 4/2s in red.
Yeah.
They might
There's,
only be, you know, haste cards for 1 turn, and after that they're 2/2s, but they're still significantly better than this.
I mean, honestly, if they're getting that swing in and they're hitting for 4, you probably don't need more than 1 turn of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these cards. I think that almost every equipment we've seen has been horrendously overpriced. The only exception being those bladed gauntlets, or the bladed gauntlet, whatever it's called. The +1/-1
Yeah, yeah.
with equip 1. That is the only like reasonably costed equipment we got in this set. And this set makes Living Weapon look so much better. Like, I didn't think Living Weapon would look as strong as it does until after I saw Mirrodin. Mirrodin is so much worse than Living Weapon.
I disagree. I think 4 Mirrodin is a much stronger mechanic, but I think the cost that they are attributing to the artifacts
That's what
that
I mean.
have it is that much worse.
Yeah, obviously a 2/2 is better than a 0/0, but what I'm saying is that the 2/2 costs color association and like 2 additional mana.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't even mean just the 2/2. I mean, like an X1 is better than the germ token that the others make.
Sure, but
Mhm.
because the germ tokens are 0/0, it
Yeah.
means that the equipment with Living Weapon have to also pump toughness. And that's like a meaningful change in the equipment philosophy. Most of these equipments for Mirrodin don't pump toughness, which means that whatever they pump after the token is much worse than any living weapon. Living weapons are all, or at least mostly, all significantly cost reduced in comparison to For Mirrodin because of the cost they're attributing to that 2/2. They're better equipments. They have non-color specific equipped and casting costs. They're just, the living weapon cards are largely and plainly better than the vast majority of all the Mirrodin cards except that one card.
Yeah. But if we find a way to break it, then we're in the money.
All right. All right, guys, that takes us to the end of the red cards. As usual, guys, this episode of Phyrexia All Will Be One Pauper set review is brought to you by nothing. So hit the subscribe button. So someday it might be brought to you by something. Let us know what your favorite red card is. Do you think we misvaluated, or maybe we hated on a card you're really excited about? Let us know what you're most excited to play about. Let us know what your pick for the best or most playable red card in Phyrexia is. We're going to take those into account when we do our top 5s. Later on, we're going to do a little poll in the channel and kind of talk to you guys about what you think the best cards are. So stay tuned for that. And as usual, guys, goodbye forever. Unless I see you next time. Peace.